Good morning. We will start session 3 on chapter atoms and molecules. If you can just see on the board, I have written atoms and molecules as well as structure of atom. That is, we will cover atoms and molecules chapter as well as the next chapter, structure of atom. But why is that I'm combining both the chapters and starting in the same chapter I am including that chapter also? That's only because, children, now in atoms and molecules chapter, the next part what you have to know is to make a chemical compound. Now for example, yesterday as I discussed, if I talk about sodium chloride, I will just say that it is NaCl, right? Magnesium chloride, I will write that as MgCl2. Why is that? Why not for NaCl I can write it 2, but for magnesium chloride I have written it 2, right? So why did we write 2 here but why not here? For that we should know something about valency. Valencies are the combining capacity of the element. Now what is this combining capacity? Why this valency is required? To understand that we need to still more understand about structure of atom, right? So what is atomic mass, what is atomic number, but still before that we need to understand the subatomic particles of atom. In the first chapter in Dalton's atomic theory, what did we study? That atoms are not divisible. Furthermore, they are the smallest to smallest particle, right? But Dalton's atomic theory was proved wrong. It was discarded because atoms can be further subdivided into its 3 subatomic particles. There are 3 subatomic particles present inside the atom. So who led that discovery? That discovery was led by few more scientists. How did they come to the conclusion? What were the different assumptions and postulates given? We will study that in structure of atom. In that we will follow a particular scientist method how the atom is described. Now see, there came Rutherford, there came J.J. Thomson, there came Niels Bohr. Everybody gave their theories about what is an atom. True, everybody knew that atom consisted of 3 subatomic particles. Dalton's atomic theory was proved wrong by that time. But how were these 3 subatomic particles? What are those? We will study. How are these 3 subatomic particles associated with the atom? Where are they located? How are they located? How are they placed? That plays a very important role in understanding valency of an element, and to know the valency, if you know the valency, we can form a chemical formula. So all are interrelated. So by the end of the session, children, for this time, we will not be completing one chapter, we will be completing 2 chemistry chapters, one after the other, that is atoms and molecules and structure of atom. Now see, now basically today's class starting part what I am going to teach you is that about our old chapter only, atoms and molecules, right? Next, after ions what I teach you, right? There is a full stop to the chapter atoms and molecules. I will go on to the next chapter and give you in detail about what exactly is an atom. What does atom consist of? What is the arrangement of the atom? Once we understand the atom arrangement, that is inside the atom, subatomic particles arrangement, then we will again come back to this chapter and understand the chemical formula writing method. By the time we will be also completing this, because this chapter, structure of atom, consists of subatomic particles, how they are arranged, what are valencies, how are the valence electrons associated, how do they orbit around the atoms, how do they orbitally move from which shell to which shell. So that gives us a clear picture about atom. There we complete structure of atom. So once we understand valency, children, it will be very easy for us to frame the frame the formula for the compounds, right? So I think the things are very clear. I'll tell you, see, anyways, it's one after the other chapter. You can just go through in your book. Whatever I'm teaching, it's from the book itself. So first of all, ions. We'll back to the chapter here, atoms and molecules. So in yesterday's class, we understood about the atomicity. Now what are ions? Ions, when we talk about, about, they are nothing but positively or negatively charged particles. For that we call it as a ions. Now basically assume that I not tell which element. Generally we have a element A and we have a element B. Okay. So these elements are not what you can say, they are not stable enough. They are not stable enough means what? Now suppose you are hungry. That means either you want to eat food, right? You are filled. You are offered with some food. What will you do with that food? You will not waste, but rather you will go and give it to somebody. But there are some people who are neither hungry nor they don't want to give anything to others. Let us call that as C. So these are most stable elements, what we call. Remember noble elements we call, noble gases we said, which do not take part in the chemical reaction. Yes, those are stable, which will not take part in anything. But out of this A and B, either if one is hungry, it will accept the food. If it is not hungry, it is filled with the food, it will give away the food what it has. Now here the food what we are talking about is nothing but electrons. So if this want electrons, that means it is in the need of an electron, it will receive electron. From whom it will receive? You will study that in structure of atom. Why it is receiving an electron, right? That you will understand. But generally understand that it is going to receive an electron. Since it is receive an electron, it becomes, electrons are negatively charged, right? So what about this? This already has more it already has more food, so it can donate electrons. So this will give electrons, that means it became positively charged. Giving away electrons means what? You are giving away, electrons are negatively charged. You are filled with positive ions there. So here the charge is positive, here the charge is negative. That means compound composed of metals and non-metals contain charged particles, right? Now see, these did not have charged particle. It borrowed the charged particle from somebody. It accepted the charged particle. This already had those particles, so it gave, so it is now filled with positive charged particles. Compounds composed of metals and non-metals contain charged particles. These charged particles are called as ions. They can be positively charged, which are called as cations, negatively charged, which are called as anions. Now, group of atoms carrying a charge is known as polyatomic ions. Polyatomic ions is, for example, if I write H3O. What is this H3O? These are hydronium ions actually. Just I wrote. So these are polyatomic ions. They are nothing but carrying group of atoms. So these two are carrying different charges. That is why they are termed as polyatomic ions. What type of charges do they carry? Whether they carry a positive charge or negative charge, or how did it come? That you will understand only if and if you understand what is the structure of atom and how are the subatomic particles arranged, right? Right. So now let's move to our usual thing, that is what exactly atoms consist of, right? Now here we give a full stop to the chapter atoms and molecules till here. To know further, we need to know actually the atoms part. So we will go on to the next chapter now, structure of atom, where we understand what exactly is atom. Now just to recapitulate, what does atoms consist of? What did Dalton tell us? They are the most smallest particle which cannot be further divided, right? That is what theory we have learned. But now the one thing children here, tomorrow in exam, if suppose if they ask you what are Dalton's postulate, you should not, you can't write that Dalton's atomic postulates are wrong, so we will not consider, no. They are the postulate given by Dalton initially. That means we should know what 6 postulates he gave us. We need to remember that, correct? But later that was discarded. Discarded why? Because they found out that atoms consist of 3 subatomic particles. Now what are those? Those are neutrons, protons and electrons. These are the 3 subatomic particles present in the atom. Let us understand more about this and their position also. Now see, about their position and all, what we are telling you here is, it is the present scenario. Presently what we are following, on that basis I am giving you this. But still, there was so many misconceptions about that. How are the electrons placed, how are protons placed, where it is placed. Then finally they came up to one conclusion. That is what I have written it as of now. So present scenario, what we consider here is, atom consists of three subatomic particles: neutrons, protons, electrons. Neutrons and protons together are called as nucleons because these position of the neutrons and protons are placed in the nucleus of an atom. Now what is the shape of an atom? Atom is in a spherical shape, right? Where nucleus is present in the center, where whole mass is present. You studied in the which part of that? Nucleus is the headquarter or something. You studied, right, in the cell chapter. So nucleus is present in the center. So this nucleus consists of neutrons and protons. The whole, we can say that the mass of an atom, the whole mass of an atom, whatever it is an atom, it's everything is based upon the nucleus. Okay. So this position of neutrons and protons are in the nucleus. That is why together we call them as a nucleons. Now where are electrons placed? Electrons are placed, they move around or they revolve around the orbit, around the nucleus. That means they revolve around the orbit. This is the position. Now what is a charge of neutron, proton and electron? When we talk about charge, the SI unit of charge is coulombs. Now about Coulomb's charge, you again study that in detail in your 10th standard. What is a charge? Neutrons are neutral. That means they neither are positive nor they are negative. It is neutral. So charge is 0. 0 coulomb, what you can tell. What is the charge of proton? Protons are positively charged. 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 19 coulombs. See. Charge of electrons. Electrons are negatively charged. Minus 1.6. That means charge of proton and charge of electrons are the same. That means that, example, if in an atom there are 10 protons, that means there are also 10 electrons. Example, number of protons are always equal to number of electrons in a atom. That is why atom is neutral, because number of protons are equal to number of neutrons. Now children, here one more thing what I would like to tell you here is, what you are studying in atoms and molecules or structure of atom, what we study is only the basics. Even though what we know, what we study about the theories, finally which postulate are we going to apply, that's also a much and much basics what we are studying. You have again detailed study about this in your 11th and 12th science. So next, charge we have understood. Now what is the mass? So mass of neutron and proton together is 1.67 into 10 raised to minus 27 kg. In the book I have given it as minus 24, right? So change that and make that as minus 27. So mass of neutron and proton is 1.6 into 10 raised to minus 27 kg. Mass of electron is 9.1 into 10 raised to minus 31 kg. Now understood? Where is the whole mass located in the atom? So this is 10 raised to minus 27 minus 31. 0 zeros if you see, which has more mass? Neutrons and protons. That is why, which is in the nucleus. That decides everything. The whole mass of an atom is located in the nucleus of an atom. Now, who discovered? Who discovered neutrons? This table is very important, children, here, right? Who discovered neutrons? Neutrons was discovered by Chadwick. Protons were discovered by Goldstein. So, it is also called as, another name for protons are canal rays or anode rays. Another name. So, that means they were found by some anode ray experiment. See, actually, how did they come to the discovery of proton? We only know that atom has 3 subatomic particles, right? These scientists, Chadwick, Goldstein and J.J. Thomson, they led to the discovery of these subatomic particles by conducting certain experiments. Now, we are not studying those experiments here. Now, for protons, that is by Goldstein, there is an experiment called as anode ray experiment, which we do not study. Discovery of electrons by J.J. Thomson. Electrons are also another name for that is called as cathode rays. Now, why cathode rays? Because they were discovered in the form of a cathode ray experiment. So, cathode ray tube, what we say, in that experiment that led to the discovery of electrons, that led to the discovery of protons, that led to the discovery of neutrons respectively. So, that led to the discovery of these subatomic particles. Now, the position what I have given you is the present position what we follow. But initially that was not followed by these scientists. Now later each one of them started giving their assumptions or postulates about how was atom and how were these protons, neutrons and electrons located in the atom. So let us study about these models, that is J.J. Thomson model, Rutherford model and finally the Niels Bohr model. How are protons, electrons and neutrons located in the atom? So let's study about the atomic models now, where the first one is Thomson's model of an atom. So when we talk about Thomson's model of an atom, he compared that to a watermelon model, or you can say a caramel pudding model or a Christmas cake model. Now why did he compare that? Because let's just assume that a watermelon. So in a watermelon, if you remove the outer part and only the edible part, which is a red colored one. So this is the watermelon if I consider. This is the edible part which is red color and there are seeds in the watermelon, right? So, according to him, this was the one. So, according to him, the red edible part is nothing but it is positively charged sphere of an atom. So, according to him, the red color ones are positively charged. Of course, that means they are the protons. Then, the black seeds in it are the electrons. That means according to Thomson, the positively charged and the negatively charged electrons, they both together make the atom neutral. He explained this saying that he predicted the presence of electrons inside the positive sphere made up of proton, that is whole the red edible part. Imagine that. Or if we talk about the caramel is nothing but the positively charged sphere, and raisins or any nuts or anything what you put in that, they are nothing but the electrons. Just same as the seeds of the watermelon are embedded in the red edible part of the watermelon, right? So that was his prediction. But his theory was discarded actually. Although this model explained the neutrality, that means they become neutral on the number of positive charge as well as negative. They cancel each other and it becomes neutral. So though this model explained the neutrality of an atom but couldn't explain other scientific experiments conducted on the atom, it could only explain that there are electrons present and there are protons present. But how are they present? How are they revolving? Nothing was explained. Only the presence of protons and electrons were told by J.J. Thomson that this could be the assumption. It could be present like this, but that was not the fact. Hence, his theory was discarded. But still, though his theory is discarded, children, we still have to know what is J.J. Thomson's atomic model, right? We need to explain this if it is asked in points. There. Next came Rutherford's model. Now, Rutherford's model was quite interesting. It was quite, what you can say, he was almost there. But at the last, to one point which could not explain was only about the position of the electrons. He could not explain it correctly. Otherwise, Rutherford gave the exact model, almost same the model of an atom. So what did he do was, he conducted an experiment. For that experiment, he took a gold foil, right? Why did he choose a gold foil? Because he wanted the thinnest foil. Now, you have studied in standard 8th about metals, non-metals, about malleability and ductility. So, which is the only metal which is most malleable as well as ductile? Gold and silver are the only metal which is more malleable and ductile, right? Out of which gold is the most malleable. Now, we have gold foils. We have aluminium foils as well, but gold foils are the thinnest foils. That is why he used gold foils. Then he made some arrangement such a way that some instrument like thing which will emit alpha rays. Now, what are these alpha rays? Alpha rays are the positively charged particles. They are nothing but helium particles, what you can see. See, just remember that they are positively charged particles. In depth again, if you have to go, you again study in higher classes, children, as I have told you. So he chose an experiment in such a way that where he placed a gold foil and he bombarded that gold foil with alpha particles. So many, it's not like 10, 15, thousands, 10,000, many alpha particles he started bombarding on the gold foil. Now, once he did this experiment, then there should be some assumption and some, not drawback, sorry, the conclusions from this experiment. What happened? There were three things what he just checked out from the experiment was, assume that, just a number I am giving you, he passed around 100 of alpha particles, you think that, right? Most of the alpha particles were easily passed through the gold foil. Most. That means, can I tell that out of 100, 90 of them directly passed. Okay. So, first point. Second point, what he found, out of that, very few has deviated from the angle. That is, this one came here, it deviated. It came here, deviated. Came here, deviated in the particular angle. Very few. Let me consider that in that 10 of them deviated. Or okay, out of that not 10, let me consider 8 of them deviated. Just an assumption number I am giving you. Okay. Then 1 in 12,000 particle. That means if I bombard at once 12,000 particle, in that 12,000 particle, 1 particle. So 1 out of every 12,000 particle retraced back in the same direction. 1. So for example, assumption is, assume that 2 particles retrace the original path. 1 particle which went straight here retrace the original path. That was a thing. What conclusions? What he did. First conclusion was that most of the alpha particles, don't use numbers here children, only this is the one appropriate number given in book. Most of the book they have also given this as 20,000, some books. So out of which particles he bombarded, most of them could easily pass without any deviation, without any disturbance, right? Out of which very few deviated in a particular angle. 1 out of every 12,000 particle deviated or rebounded the original path. This was the 3 conclusions drawn from the Rutherford experiment. That means, now out of this, what conclusion do you come based on this? Now let me give you an example. Now suppose we have railings, not railings, what you can say is here, it's like a fence. Okay, this is a fence, you just imagine that. Okay, and now I am standing to a particular point. Now I am supposed to throw stones, and those stones should not touch any of the fence line. That means it's a game, you think. We are supposed to throw the stones to the other side of the fence without touching this anything. Now The thing is, the fence line is like this. Very easy, right? That means most of the stones what you throw can easily go and fall on the other side. What if the fence line was like this? Very difficult for you to throw. Now here, since the fence is like this, whatever stones you are throwing, most of the stones are actually going easily and falling out. This means that most of the alpha particles are easily passing through the gold foil means. Now suppose if this is an atom, if it is entering here, these particles, these alpha particles can easily pass. That means most of the atom is empty. There is lots and lots of space available in the atom, right? That is why those particles are moving freely. Like this, it is empty. It can go easily, right? Then, very few particles, what happened was, they deviated in a particular angle. Now just imagine, when you throw a stone, that stone will touch the border of the fence, just the border. What will happen? That stone will slightly fall somewhere there, right? Just imagine, the stone is going and hitting by going that, it just touches the border of the fence. So it will not fall, it might fall little bit here. So what would happen here? There are some charged particles, positively charged particles, because like charges repel. There are some positively charged particles available which is making those alpha particles to deviate. Third point, 1 out of every 12,000 particles retraced back the original path. Now directly if you hit to that fence wire only, directly if you hit the fence wire, it has to rebound back, because if that force you are hitting, it will come back, right? Directly when it is hitting the nucleus of an atom. Nucleus of an atom has positively charged, which is nothing but now protons and neutrons are held together, bounded together in the center of an atom, that is the nucleus. That means whole amount of mass is associated. There is something which is there in the center of the atom which is tightly, boundly packed with so much of mass positively charged. When alpha particles struck to it, it rebounded back. That was the assumption given by Rutherford, right? So with this, probably you might have understood what Rutherford drew the conclusion. I just read these points. Conclusion drawn by Rutherford. Atom consists of, see now what I have explained, children, you cannot write that in your own words. Now I try to explain it to you in point wise. You need to write what's given in the book. It's the same. But if you understand the explanation, you can put this in these words. I have heard many children telling that, teacher, we have written same thing about Rutherford or Niels Bohr thing. But the thing is, you have written in your own words like a story. This is not a story. This is a conclusion drawn from Rutherford experiment. What did he come to a conclusion after what he conducted? Observations, sorry, these are observations. Okay, I give conclusion. These are observations. Observation given where most of the alpha particles pass through the gold foil undeflected. Some of the alpha particles deflected by the foil by a very small angles. 1 out of every 12,000 particles appear to rebound. These are the observation. Now let's see what are the conclusion. Atom consists of predominantly empty space as most of the alpha particles pass through the gold foil undeflected, right? Second point, atom consists centrally placed positively charged nucleus carrying positively charged particles because few particles suffer the deflection, slight angle they deflected, and very few, that is 1 in 12,000, rebounded back. Since a minute fraction of alpha particles suffered the deflection and very few bounced back, this led to the conclusion that most of the space of an atom is empty, right? And the space occupied by the nucleus is negligible to this empty space. So the size of the nucleus was about 10 raised to minus 5 times the size of an atom. The whole atomic mass is concentrated in the nucleus. This was the theory, or this was the assumption drawn or given by the Rutherford. So though Rutherford gave this, but still his model was not accepted. Why? Because finally what he said that now this is a atom, right, and this is a nucleus, right. So these are electrons. So this will revolve around the nucleus. So this will revolve, right, in its own orbit. But what will happen according to Max Planck? What theory, what he gave was in a particular saying that anything which is an electron which is moving, or anything which is moving, if it accelerates, that will tend to radiate as well as lose energy. Now what is this theory? You need not break your head. You will study this again in detail in Max Planck theory in your higher classes. Only thing remember, an electron revolving around the orbit will tend to radiate, energy, right? It will lose energy as and when it is revolving around the orbit. Now since it will lose energy, what will happen? So it keeps revolving. So finally once it loses energy, it will completely become zero and fall into the nucleus of an atom. That means the atom is not stable at all. Any atom which is, electrons are revolving. That means an atom is stable only for some time. After some time the atom is unstable, that is completely zero. That cannot happen. So that was the only reason where Rutherford did not give any explanation about or any clarification about what could be the motion of the electron moving around the orbit of a nuke, how it is revolving, which clearly did not give any explanation. So his theory was also discarded. Then last came the Niels Bohr theory. So his assumption was almost equal to the Rutherford. Niels Bohr also told the same thing. What Rutherford has told, it is right. The all mass of an atom is located at the center, nucleus. That is right. But he gave a special place for the electrons to revolve around the orbit. He gave a suitable place. Now what was that? Suppose if this is an atom, now this is the nucleus of an atom. Electrons revolve around the orbits in the form of a shells. That is, each shell will have a name. K shell. First shell is called as K. Second is L. M, N, and so on. Is this end only till here? No, this will go on, but in your syllabus you will only study till K, L, M probably. Not even you will touch beyond that. Not even in your 10th standard also, children. You will study about beyond shells in your higher classes. So what are electrons doing here? Electrons are revolving around the shells. But how are they revolving, and in what particular conditions are they revolving? They are revolving in such a way that in a particular time, if they have to exchange the electrons, they do that. But what is that exchange of electrons? You don't study here. You only have to understand here. You study that later about what is the exchange of electrons among these shells. You study that in your higher classes. Here you only understand that electrons revolve around this in a particular manner. In what manner do they revolve? Let's understand. Electrons revolve around the nucleus in the various orbits, or you can say in the discrete orbit. Discrete orbit means first shell, second shell, third shell and fourth shell. Each shell has specifically number of electrons. Now for example, in the classroom, if I tell you, I'll give you there are number of benches. First row I have only 2 benches. Second row I have so many benches. Third row I have so many benches. Now what will you do? Come and occupy the seats. I will tell you. How many can come and occupy in the first bench? First bench only 2 can occupy. Why? Because I have left only 2 bench. I have left only 2 seats there. So number of seats available in the each shell, electrons will go and occupy into a particular shell. Now what is that shell arrangement? How do that electrons occupy that shell? That we will study in the next class. So in today's class, we only understand about what are the different atomic models. Rutherford's we understood. let me just take you to about assumptions made by Niels Bohr, which we follow today, children. Only certain special orbits known as discrete orbit of electrons are allowed inside the atom. Discrete, that is shells. While revolving in the discrete orbits, electrons do not radiate energy, right? Now, if they radiate energy, what will happen? They will lose energy. And if they lose energy, they tend to fall in the nucleus of an atom. Since they are not radiating. But what was happening in Rutherford? They were radiating energy when they were revolving, right? That is why the theory was discarded. Now, don't break your head about how do they radiate, what will that energy go. You will all study that later in higher classes. Only what basics we want, we will do it here. Energy is emitted or absorbed by an atom only when electron moves from one orbit to another. That is, energy is radiated when electron moves from this K shell to L or L to M or one to another. But how does that happen? You will study in higher classes, because that is a very deep phenomenon, very deep thing or information what you have to know. So these are the assumptions made by these. These are the assumptions made by Thomson, Rutherford and Niels Bohr. Now, how many electrons will fit here? We will do that in our next class. Along with that, we need to also study that we understood about an atom, but what is the mass of an atom? What is the atomic number of an atom? Those all things we will do that in our next class.